Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's French Open Round 3 catch-up, sponsored by the Boodles.
Rybakina withdraws due to illness.
Rublev falls in 5.
And Aryna Sabalenka declines her press conference.
Chris, today is the 4th of June and we are here to catch up on round 3 of the French Open at Tennis Weekly HQ. Sadly, you are no longer in the grounds of Roland Garros. You are back in London. How are you feeling? Have you had any withdrawal symptoms yet of not being in Paris?
Well, whilst I was on the Eurostar, I was firstly, I was joined by Jeremy Chardy, which made leaving. I felt like I was taking a part of the French Open with me in many ways.
Were you starstruck?
No, but I think he realised that I knew who he was.
Was he starstruck? Because he was in the presence of Tennis Weekly podcast.
I did have my microphone out, so maybe that's why he was looking at me, and I was trying to get an interview with him.
But was he scared? He had that fear of, oh God, this guy is going to ask me questions.
I think maybe he also thought slightly at the Eurostar terminal, Gare du Nord, that maybe we knew each other, that I wasn't crazy. But anyway, it was fine. And then since I got back and looking at the scores, I don't think I missed much on Chatrier yesterday. Yeah. It seems like there wasn't much tennis.
Yeah, just generally across all of yesterday, just looking at all the singles matches available, there really wasn't a lot going on, was there?
No, and they weren't close. I mean, I was looking at this and it begs the question about scheduling on Chatrier, because if you have a withdrawal, obviously unavoidable, and then a double bagel, I think Holger only lost about 8 games. Yeah. And that's your ticket.
We could have got the night session started, it felt like, a lot earlier because of, the pace. Some of the thrashings really that we saw.
Hopefully we're getting all of them out of the way before the second week.
Exactly.
But it did make it a lot easier not being there, because it's like when you go on holiday and your weather might not be amazing where you are, but it's raining at home, So
well,
not missing out.
Well, we're going to be talking about all of the action that did happen on day 7 and day 6. But before we get into that, I just want to remind our listeners of our Boodles competition. If you want to enter, this is your last chance. The competition will close at midnight tonight. Winners will be announced in our double quick time round 4 catch up tomorrow evening. We're also going to give a collector set update. So, Chris, it really is all going on with the pod at the moment.
It really is. And collector set, I think we've been postponing.
How bad is collector set for everyone? Because of everything.
I mean, this has to be one of our worst years for collector set to date. I mean, Australia was not a great performance.
I was feeling confident with our player picks, if I'm being quite honest. I thought there was a good range in there. I thought there were a few kind of unknowns, but no.
Not to be.
No.
I've archived our prediction posts on Instagram. That's what I should do, just to try and hide the fact.
Yeah. The tennis gods were not kind to us. The tennis gods were not kind to us, and we've got to start with something that hasn't happened in round 3, but happened in round 2 again whilst we were recording. The French tennis fans were not kind to Taylor Fritz, were they? You were at this match. We need to talk about it because, well, maybe not the match itself, but certainly Taylor Fritz's, shall I say, celebration after winning against the last French player standing in Paris, shushing the crowd. Being live in the arena whilst that was going on, what did you make of it? I mean,
from an atmospheric perspective, it was like nothing I'd witnessed from a crowd sort of at a sporting event, especially a tennis event. We all know the French crowd has a reputation for letting people know what they think. I mean, we've seen them boo their own players if they're not performing well enough, but they also will really try and get involved if their players are struggling. And in fairness to the French crowd, there was only one French player left in the draw, and he was on court. So they were trying to get him to lift his game, and he obviously started well, but it's all started to go a bit pear-shaped when he started to get a little bit more animated at certain times, and it almost feels like there should be a rule book for playing at the French Open, which is do not celebrate against a French player unless you want to feel the full fury of the Parisian crowd. But it was very unfortunate from being there. I think you don't want to see anyone booing anybody, but you do think that they weren't being particularly unfair. It's annoying. They're singing the French national anthem. It's a great atmosphere in terms of the French event in that sense. But I mean, imagine if that was in the US. That's very weird to be singing the national anthem whilst you're waiting to serve a point.
Is it not tit for tat, given how hostile the crowds have been? This is just simply a player dishing it back.
I didn't personally like it. I felt like it wasn't necessary. And I think he could have just had a quiet celebration. No one was actively, I think people don't understand that no one was actively hoping that someone doesn't do well. They just really want their French player to win. And if that's a double fault, that's a double fault. They will cheer a missed first serve. It's not the way to do it. It's not particularly, as we said, kind. But I don't think it was personal against Taylor Fritz. And if he was playing against someone else in the next round, I think they would have happily cheered him on. But poor Marion Bartoli, I mean, she turned up looking absolutely wonderful in a sparkling dress. And then she just got booed for about 5 minutes, got one question out. They had to abandon the press conference. So you do think that there is a read the room aspect there from Taylor as well as from the interviewers, that probably that wasn't the best time to try and give someone a microphone when the crowd was obviously not going to have any of it.
Yeah, I think they got down to kind of, we're going to do one question and that's it, because I don't know if did they feel like it could have gone further than booing? Like, do you think they only did one question because you just don't know what was going to happen, given, you know, he effectively incited the crowd? Could someone have, like, I don't know, jumped the barriers and confronted him? Did it feel like that in the crowd, or did you still think it was on that sort of playful side?
I think it's hard to know. I think the atmosphere was very much like people were enjoying themselves. Alcohol was being consumed. But then we've seen incidents in tennis that weren't in an atmosphere like that, where very, very sad and awful things have happened, like with Monica Seles at the French and things like that. So I don't think it's anywhere in the same league. I think it's very much match specific in terms of what they're kind of booing about. I don't think that he would have had any problems even walking around the grounds the next day. I think it is very isolated in that sense. I just think it was just all a bit unnecessary. And I think the excitement got away with the French crowd. And I think shushing the crowd, I mean, when you've beaten Arthur Rinderknecht, I mean, of all the performances he's ever had, I mean, that's not really 4 sets to Rinderknecht isn't really the one where you made a statement victory. But hey, he had his moment. He had his Medvedev moment. We love characters in the sport.
I'm just secretly hoping that come US Open, we get Taylor Fritz versus a Frenchman, and a Frenchman wins, and role reversal.
It's just the crowd. I mean, they will remember this. Yeah. They will remember this. And listeners, if you'd like to see that, we actually have posted the full video on our YouTube channel of that moment, which is getting a lot of heat. There's a lot of American and French people in the comments. So it's very unfortunate, but it kind of is what makes the French Open exciting in some ways.
Yes, it is like nothing else, and the crowds are probably some of the most hostile you can experience on the Grand Slam stage. Certainly not like Wimbledon. One player who's not going to be experiencing though the hostility or just generally the crowds anymore is Elena Rybakina, who has withdrawn from the competition. She cited a viral illness. I think she was having some sleepless nights, a fever, a headache, and decided to call it quits. She was scheduled to face Sara Sorribes-Tormo first match on Chatrier, and a few hours before called a press conference. I mean, all credit to her, to be fair, to come out and actually go in front of the media, but said, she was not going to be taking any further part in the tournament. Chris, this caught me completely by surprise. We thought, the progress this week of Rybakina so far has been pretty serene, but this stuff obviously going on in the background, it took its toll.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it did. I think there's something going around in Paris. I think that's kind of the word from what people have said at kind of the locker room. There's a few people. I don't think that Pegula necessarily had the same thing, but we'll talk about that a bit later, where she was under the weather. She did play.
They didn't go to the same restaurant, did they?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure they're buddies, but who knows? But no, I found out the news when I was digging into my tennis ball shaped Eurostar cheesecake, and I just thought this is a wonderful trip. Then I just thought it's all come tumbling down in Paris, because I think she was my favourite for it, and having watched her play, playing so well, playing within herself.
Yeah.
You have to feel if she can land a few serves, she's got a great chance of getting through some of these players. And against someone like Sara Sorribes-Tormo, like, you have to play like Emma Raducanu did against her at the US Open. You got to be in and out as quickly as possible, go for every shot, don't get long rallies. But she is the worst opponent if you don't want to spend much time on court to play against. So you can understand. But I guess the question I have, and obviously it's absolutely gutting for her, and she wouldn't withdraw if it wasn't very bad, but should she have turned up? Because Venus has turned up before, played one game, gone home. Should she have turned up and tried, even though she knows it wouldn't necessarily have gone well? Or we've seen Serena play in Paris completely sick the entire time and still win the title. Was this too much of a precaution, or do we think this was a necessary measure?
Do you know what? I would have liked to have seen her taken to the court. I completely understand Sara Sorribes-Tormo. She's one of the most physical athletes on the tour. We know her matches always seem to go to 3 sets. But I would have liked to have seen Rybakina give it a go. As you said, I feel like she was playing so well that if she had come in with a strategy of, right, I don't feel 100%, I'm going to try and keep the points as short as possible, then I think it could have maybe been enough.
We'll play one set, and if you don't win that first set, we've seen that before where players know they can't go the full extent after that. We saw that in the Rome final as well. But it did feel like, for example, if you're able to do a press conference, I'm not saying playing sport at the world's highest level is the same as a press conference, but when you are and you do have a very bad fever, I mean, you're bedridden. So that for me gave me hope that, if you're able to do a press conference, you're able to get yourself out of bed, there's a chance. But I also do fully understand that grass is where she's expected to do the best. And if you do put your body under stress when you're not feeling well, you don't want to jeopardize defending your Wimbledon title, that's for sure.
The mere presence or the mere prospect of facing SST, it was like, I'm calling that press conference now. You
know what? Maybe she wanted the 4 hours back. She didn't want to have to be out there that long.
Exactly. Look, I want to get to the UK. I want to get onto some grass courts. I don't want a 4-hour slog against Sorribes-Tormo. I mean, who do you think is the biggest beneficiary of Rybakina withdrawing? Because obviously Swiatek is on her side of the draw. Would you say she is the biggest kind of beneficiary of this? Is the kind of French Open ladies draw, are we just clamoring to the hope now of Swiatek versus Sabalenka in a final?
I mean, that might be what the people want, but I definitely want Sloane to be there. So
very true.
You've already derailed me there on that question, but no, I do think the big beneficiary is obviously Iga. She has what's probably becoming a bit of a mental block when it comes to playing against Rybakina. So I think she obviously will be disappointed that she can't prove to everyone that she is able to beat her and finish the match and beat her. I think she would have wanted a statement win for sure. But at the same time, I don't think she'll be sad that she doesn't have to play her in order to pick up a third title here. But again, I mean, I was completely shocked by this, and I don't think any of us saw it coming. And so for Iga, I think she was probably mentally preparing for a much tougher French Open defence than maybe it's looking like she's going to have given the results she had on Chatrier yesterday, Joel.
I know. Double bagel. I mean, she's only lost 8 games in 3 matches, 4 bagels. 6-love against Wang. I was reading Wang was coming into the French Open 0-6 on clay in WTA main draws. So it was almost a little bit surprising. I think she got to round 3 in the first place. But,
and then she met the final boss of clay, Iga Swiatek.
And then she was like, okay, this is a real clay court. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone really likes to see double bagels happen. I know they create great headlines, and I know we can talk about Iga Swiatek and the bakery. I know Iga Swiatek, to her credit, I think, in her press conference, she likes to shut down those talks because she thinks it's, disrespectful to her opponent. But certainly I think from what we saw of Swiatek in round 1 to this performance, that ominously perhaps feels like Swiatek is, the full package is coming together.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the big difference for me was that her second serve was that much better. She didn't face a single break point. And Wang is someone who, the way that she does play, and anyone who's seen her play, She does like to grind out points, but she is also perfectly capable of taking on a shot, and that would have been her plan. And so for her to be so effective behind first serve, second serve, and on return, I mean, she won 68% of points against the first serve and 80 against the second. I'm not quite sure how it lasted 53 minutes because the stats were, I mean, truly very one-sided. But for Iga, I think it's just a case where, you know, some of these players, like in her last round and her first round, you know, they can, anyone in a Grand Slam draw can play. And so to show that someone who has made it to a third round, you're able to double bagel. This wasn't a round one, it's a round three. So I think it's impressive. And I think her next draw against Sabalenka, I think that is also a really good draw for her because they played quite recently. And obviously Iga got through that one. And so it's almost like the draw couldn't have unfolded better for her.
I mean, just on Sabalenka, she defeated Bianca Andreescu 6-1, 6-1. I think we were all clamoring to the prospect of Swiatek, blockbuster prospect of Swiatek Andreescu in round 4. What I saw that, I didn't watch much of that match, but what happened with Andreescu in that match? Because I was not expecting breadstick in favour of Sabalenka.
And it's the opposite of how Bianca plays. If she doesn't, she's one of those players that does have a plan A. She's got a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E, because she's got so much variety in her game. If she needs to win ugly, she can. And this obviously looked like she just didn't have anything that was working, I'd have to say. I mean, the unforced errors were very, very high. And we all
was
have
that
seen
because of Sabalenka, or was this just Andreescu not turning up?
It was an off day, I think. And then a case of if you are having an off day and you're having a bit of a Madison Keys unforced error moment, it can easily go away from you if your opponent is having a good day. I mean, Sabalenka's numbers were in the positive differential when it came to winners versus unforced errors, and the gap just exploded as the match went on. She did, I mean, if you look at some of the stats from that, Sabalenka only made 49% of first serves. And so it does kind of tell you that clearly there were chances when it came to that. And even if she was really going for the serve, Bianca was not able to handle it. So a big shame. But again, I'm sure Bianca can take something positive from the fact that she was able to play the French Open, which looked like it would be in doubt after that awful injury in Miami. So onto the grass for Bianca.
And, another player like Sabalenka, who in the end had a very, very comfortable win with 2 breadsticks, 6-1, 6-1, was Coco Gauff, who defeated Mira Andreeva, dropped the first set in a tiebreak, 6-7, but as I said, came through 6-1, 6-1 in sets 2 and 3. Now, Chris, this was being sort of billed, well, in my head anyway, as like almost like the battle of the teenage prodigies. You know, this was a very interesting prospect for Coco Gauff. She had, I think this was like only her third or fourth match ever that she was facing an opponent that was younger than her. What did you see of this match? Given, you know, Coco Gauff and her forehand troubles, it looked like her backhand, particularly in that second and third sets, she was swinging freely, she was swinging great, but yeah, it was a little bit scratchy, I think, to begin with. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it was for sure. I got the chance to see some of Coco playing in Paris, and I think she played much better than she has recently. And I think one of these sorts of results, because it's so hard playing against someone when you are the young hope, then playing the next young hope, and everyone wants the headline to be kind of Coco Gauff is beaten by someone even younger than her, you know? And I think that's something where you've got to feel that pressure. And in that first set, I think she did. And then after that, I think she thought, you know what, this can go one of two ways. I can lift my game. I've got nothing to lose. And she really made her mark on the match. And I think super impressed, because after that first set, I thought, here we go. This is not going to be a 3-set comeback. And I would not have predicted the scoreline to be like this. So I think it's a really, really, really good result, because Andreeva's been causing a lot of players problems. And for her, it's a great learning curve.
It felt like she just ran out of steam, or she had put all her eggs in one basket for that first set and didn't really have much else to give. And you could see, I think, the frustration kind of boil over. I think she was arguably a little bit lucky she didn't get defaulted, because I think she hit a ball into the stands, received a warning, was lucky it did not hit anyone. But maybe that, again, shows, you know, her, understandably her lack of maturity on the court, given, you know, she's only, 16 years old on the tour.
Yeah, I mean, that is obviously something where, I mean, we've seen players who've been around a long time sort of hit the ball into the stands, Novak Djokovic. But I think something that is key from this one would be in these big moments is how to be able to kind of keep your level up. And I think against someone like Coco, who is the best defender in the game, you can't really just do it in one set because she is going to get the balls back in play. And if you do start to question it, it's going to get pretty dicey because Coco is one of the best movers, if not the best mover on the tour, and clay is her favourite surface. So it's a bit like playing against Sloane, is that, and for Sabalenka this evening, you've got to have the game plan, execute the game plan, and if that does not work, then you're in quite a lot of trouble if you're a big hitter.
I mean, we also had Schmiedlova go through, Ons Jabeur, Bernarda Pera.
The dark horse of the competition, Joel.
Well, hang on. My dark horse is Beatrice Haddad-Maia. You know I'm a big fan.
She is your favourite.
She came through in 3 sets. I didn't realise this. That was the first time she's gone past round 2 of a major, despite being at a career high ranking of 12. Now, those things don't go together. I know she had a great grass court last season up to Wimbledon and then like went out early. But seems to me that I think Haddad-Maia is delivering on the goods this time.
I mean, I've never heard of a player with a ranking of 12 that's never been past the second round. So this isn't even like she was able to go 1 better. She's gone 2 better. So I think that's
Forced
something
to be reckoned with, Chris.
I mean, but do you enjoy the matches, Joel, would be my question. I think at times I do, but sometimes it can get pretty long-winded, I would say. But I mean, it's great to see because if someone obviously has that level of talent where they can get themselves ranked up to 12 in the world, you don't want to see them be kind of unable to replicate that on the biggest stage. So first time in the round of 16, she's a tough opponent. And, you know, with Joel's kiss of death of supporting her, I'm sure that she will go out in the next round.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think there are some times when I think she's a great player on the tour. Has she been able to replicate that when it gets
discipline? Absolutely.
The really important tournaments, i.e. Grand Slams? It's been found wanting a little bit. But yeah, good to see her doing well at the French Open. Moving on to the men's side, Chris, we've already alluded to. You're going to have to take me through this kind of next, I feel like, 10, 15 minutes of the pod because I am honestly unmotivated by talking about a lot of these men's matches that happened today. Perhaps the most interesting one was the night session match. It was Frances Tiafoe versus Sasha Zverev. Perhaps a lot of people would have had Tiafoe coming through this, giving Zverev's form struggles of late. But no, it was Zverev coming through 3-6, 7-6, 6-1, 7-6. I'm not going to lie, it was not pretty at times. I know I had a few friends message me saying this gave them US Open 2020 final vibes between Thiem and Zverev in terms of who's doing the best to lose this, essentially. But yeah, but still a good win for Zverev. That was his first top 20 win since 2022 after 7 consecutive losses. So is it fair to say that was a bit of an upset?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I think on a Grand Slam stage and in Paris.
You don't think that's an upset? Okay.
Oh, it's hard to say. I think I wasn't surprised that he won because I do think Tiafoe is someone who can mentally sort of drift away from matches at times over 5 sets. And I think getting over the line is my biggest surprise with that one, kind of 7-6 in the 4th, because we've seen Sasha in final set tie breaks and in very close matches, particularly this year against kind of Medvedev, where he hasn't got that result. So I think that's probably a really positive thing for him, is that he was able to kind of turn it around, win 2 tie breaks, and also make his mark in that 3rd set. So would it have been nice to see, and would I have thought that Tiafoe might have edged this one? Probably. But at the same time, I think when you are someone who's been to this stage of Grand Slam so frequently, you are able to find ways to win, and he's defending a semi-final point. So that's going to be it's going to be a challenge. But I think it's good to see when a player comes back. It can take a while, but he's starting to put it together, and I think that's good for the game. Yeah,
and on a poignant moment as well, because I was reading this was and the anniversary of obviously him having that horrific injury against against Rafa being taken off on a wheelchair. So maybe that was also serving him, some motivation. But yeah, he's certainly, I think, proving his point and finding his best tennis, almost picking up where he left off, strangely, from last year in the French Open. But Zverev is going to play Grigor Dimitrov next, which feels to me like a little bit of an old school throwback match. Dimitrov came through Altmaier in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3, 6-1. Do you think Zverev will have any issues with Dimitrov, or do you think Dimitrov could spring a surprise?
Well, I mean, I think the Altmaier result from Dimitrov, I mean, obviously after that 5-hour and 26 match, Altmaier was physically struggling.
Knackered.
And wasn't able to play his best game. So Dimitrov has kind of sailed through without dropping a set. It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be pretty at times. I think it's going to be very similar to the TFO match. Yeah, I think it's going to be a few chances missed, a lot of breakpoint chances missed. But for both of them, it's a really big opportunity because Dimitrov hasn't been to this sort of stage of a Grand Slam where people, I mean, it's almost reached the point where we don't actually talk about him too much as someone that we think could go particularly deep. And that's not because we don't think he has the talent. It's much more because it's not something that has been happening that much recently.
We just sort of see him, I think, play this role of he turns up at Grand Slams and to a tournament organiser's point of view, yeah, he's a player you could put on the outside courts that brings and attracts a big crowd because of his name.
Yeah, well, he's not been into the second week of a Grand Slam since the 2021 Australian Open, and before that it was 2019 with that US Open semi-final. So it's definitely a case where he hasn't been able to get past some of these early matches, and some of these sort of regular tour players, I think they've had the best of him. So hopefully they're both inspired, but it's going to be a big step up based on who Dimitrov's played so far, that's for sure.
And not really surprising, South Americans doing particularly well. 2 Argentinians, Francisco Cerundolo and Thomas Echeverry, came through against higher seeded opposition. Cerundolo against Fritz, Echeverry against Chorich. And we also had Nicolas Jarry as well take out Marcos Giron in 4. So no surprise there as such, I think. But a little bit disappointing, for Borna Chorich. I had him going a bit further than this. Is he a player who should be doing better at Grand Slams? Yeah,
I think we've talked about this before. He has clearly he's got a big expectation of himself and a big kind of sense that he is able to do this. I think that's something we've seen a lot from his interviews, that he really thought he could win the US Open at the end of last year, and then he lost in the first round. And so I think when he's, as we said, with the shushing the crowd and what went down in Paris, that it's something that it doesn't quite stack up in terms of the Netflix side of things, the fame, the hype, the expectation, and the results just aren't quite there. He's still a bubbling under talent for me in terms of he's not pushing into the top 4 like a Rublev is. He's not really in the mix in the way that you could say, that some players always will be. A Carlos, a Holger is someone that is always in the mix now, has brought themselves up that level. So for me, it's a disappointment. He's a good clay player. He hasn't had a great clay season, but he's most dangerous on grass. So I think time will tell, but so far I think it's been a case where he hasn't kind of delivered what we would have expected based on some of the results after that Indian Wells triumph.
And just before we go to a quick break, just got to give a word to Holger Rune and Casper Ruud, because they've also come through.
Scandinavians.
I know, they're taking over. I don't know what to do. Yes. I mean, Rune was beneficiary of that withdrawal earlier on in round 2 against Gael Monfils. Came through in straight sets here. I think Ruud got it done in 4. That feels to me like we're on a collision course here.
We are. I think Holger, I think he's really trying his best not to spend any time on court after what was quite a tricky first round encounter.
Yeah.
And Casper is playing himself back into form, which I think is the sort of thing that Grand Slam tennis can do. I think he probably isn't the best 3-set match player, because if you look at some of them, he would have always sort of dropped a set except for that first round against Ema. But it would be great to see. Yeah. And I think it's proving harder than you think for some of the seeds to get the wins across both sides of the draw, whether it's, keeping your fitness up. And I think something that we can all say about Casper is that he probably has a great immune system because he's been playing so much, he could play so long and so physically fit. So if it's a war of attrition, as something sort of an illness goes through the locker room, I mean, Casper might really benefit there.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe potentially not too far away from that meetup, but yeah, one more obstacle for each of them both to overcome. But we're going to take a quick break now, but join us in the second half where we will be looking back on day 6 from the French Open. So do not go anywhere. The Boodles is back. After a 3-year break, the ultimate pre-Wimbledon tennis event is returning to Stoke Park from the 27th of June to the 1st of July.
And we're offering one lucky Tennis Weekly listener the chance to win a pair of stadium passes to join us at the country estate for a day of world-class tennis in an English garden party setting.
Where you can sip champagne, dine in style, and mingle with your favourite tennis stars, including
Stefanos Tsitsipas,
Andrei Rublev,
Felix Auger-Aliassime,
Seb Korda,
Lorenzo Musetti,
Hubert Hurkacz,
and even more top players to be confirmed in the coming weeks.
The Boodles is located just 35 minutes from central London, and every seat in the stadium is no more than 10 metres from the court, giving every guest the ultimate fan experience on one of the UK's finest grass courts.
Tickets start from £90 and attendance is strictly limited to 2,000 per day, so booking early is advised to avoid disappointment. To book, visit their website, theboodles.com.
And for your chance to win a pair of stadium passes, all you have to do is follow us on social media at Tennis Weekly Pod, like our competition post, and tag a friend that you would like to come with you.
Maximum 2 entries per person, 1 per social channel on Instagram and Twitter. The competition closes on Sunday the 4th of June at midnight. Winners will be announced on our 4th round catch-up on Tuesday the 6th of June, so listen in to find out if you are a lucky winner.
Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by the Boodles. And now we are going to move on to day 6, Chris, which you were actually there for. You saw quite a few of the men's matches, which we're going to start with. We're also going to talk about the Arena Sabalenka press conference boycott. But I want to start with the night session match, because I was very interested to see how this went. Carlos Alcaraz, Denis Shapovalov. It looked like to me that Shapovalov was actually going to make a fight of it. He was up in that, I think, in that second set, and I was like, "Oh, okay, the crowd are going to get their money's worth from this match." But as a paying spectator in the crowd, did you feel like a little shortchanged by the result, given it was at the end a comfortable win for Alcaraz?
Well, if someone told me that it would be 6-1, 6-4, 6-2, I would have said, yeah, that sounds about right, based on where Denis is at. And
in that first set, when Shapovalov won a game at 5-love down, and the crowd gave the sort of the pity cheer of like, "Oh, well done, you've won one game." I was sort of thinking, how has Denis Shapovalov reached this point?
Yeah, I mean, you have to question it because the talent level is so high. But to get 2 hours on Shatter in a night match, it was the first night session I've been to. I think it could have gone not so great away. Like, I mean, I was at I was at Taylor Fritz, which went way later than the Zverev match, which was his first night match that was moved after the withdrawal of Gale. So that was over so quickly, that match. And so you can get unlucky with night matches. So even though the scoreline was 6-1, 6-4, 6-2, when he was up 4-1 in that second set, it did really feel like there was that excitement still. We had that moment of like, oh, we might have a match on our hands.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like it was an early break to Alcaraz and then he just served it out in that second set. So I'd say I wasn't too disappointed. But when it came to Denis, I mean, I saw him in Stockholm as well last year, and he just mentally loses it so quickly in matches. Almost like immediately he went for an overhead, which he should have let bounce, completely missed it. And then that just set the course of things, because it's one thing going after your shots, but you still have to be, sort of to engage your tennis IQ and think about making sure that you make more than you miss. And 10 double faults. I mean, he double faulted his lead away. And that third set was quite sad to watch, in fairness, because it was not competitive at all. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, he gave so many chances, 16 break points Alcaraz had, and it was only a 3-set match. So I guess from a Dennis perspective, you've got to think...
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It feels like he, on the tour, is perhaps the one player with the most highest talent level, but lowest kind of form going on at the moment. The gap it feels just so massive, and it's just so frustrating that, we're still, I think, having these conversations on, Denis Shapovalov, he's more highlight reel than point construction, doesn't necessarily maybe think about strategy as much, wants to go for his shots, when all the talent, frustratingly, is there to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what is his ambition? Is he someone who wants to make a really great living on the tour, is unable to sort of handle the pressure, but still really enjoys playing tennis? I feel like he's sort of in that camp, because if you are one of those competitors who is going to kind of make a big impact and kind of reach world number one, win slams, you don't lose it mentally after you miss one overhead in the first set. You can't be that fragile when it comes to the mentality on the court. So for me, he probably sits in that sort of Kachanov area where he obviously burst onto the scene, was playing so well, but wasn't able to necessarily mentally stay with it. And now it looks like as he matures, he's actually been able to really produce some great results at slams recently and at the Olympics. So you have to hope that maturity will be the thing that will get Dennis to get that sort of super special result that we're all looking for from him.
And another match that really failed to live up to the billing was Lorenzo Musetti versus Cam Norrie. For me, Musetti actually delivering a statement win in the tournament against Norrie. It was an absolute, I'm afraid to say from a British point of view, it was an absolute demolition job. Norrie really didn't find his feet at all in that match. I think the less said about the performance, the better. But for Lorenzo Musetti, he has got Carlos Alcaraz next. Do you see Musetti challenging Alcaraz in ways that he hasn't been challenged? Well, he has been taken to a fourth set, but do you think Musetti could push him all the way or give him more to think about?
I mean, I really do. I was at that match as well, because one of the benefits for our listeners, if you do have a night session ticket, you're able to enter the grounds from 6:30 with the night match not starting before 8:15.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah, so that's something that I didn't know when we purchased the tickets. So that was a bonus, and we got ourselves out onto court Simona Mathieu, which was a great atmosphere. But I mean, Musetti was just in full flight, and it looked like Norrie had a bit of an injury niggle. He had some strapping, and he definitely wasn't playing the sort of tennis that you would expect from Cam. And he was missing some very uncharacteristic shots, whilst Musetti was super focused, and his court craft and the way he was sort of spreading the ball around the court, it was a bit majestic. I mean, someone like Cam gets balls back, and he was regularly being kind of completely outmaneuvered. And so it's probably the first time I've watched Musetti play with just complete confidence that he was going to get it done and that this was going to be a fully complete performance. And he's beaten him before. Carlos said in his interview afterwards, I think it was in the Hamburg final, Musetti got his first 500 win on clay. So they have a bit of history there, and that was when Carlos was up and coming, as opposed to, the number one, the US Open champion, and probably one of the favourites for this title. So for Musetti, we've seen it before. He's got nothing to lose. He's a lot more mature than when he played Djokovic at the French. And I have this on upset alert.
Ooh, okay.
If I had to say, I think Musetti's going to get it done.
Oh, now that is fighting talk. That is fighting talk. I mean, another Italian who had a fantastic result was Lorenzo Sonego, who took out Andrei Rublev in 5 sets, was 2 sets to love down, and then one in 5. So it was 5-7. Love 6 got bageled in that second set, and then 6-3, 7-6, 6-3. I think, like similar to Yannick Sinner, for Rublev, this will be a sore one. You don't expect players of his quality to let slip a lead of 2 sets to love, particularly when you've bageled your opponent. And yeah, Sonego, I think he's never done this before. I think in his press conference he said it was like a miracle, but I think it was still a fantastic match. And really disappointing from Rublev, another player who probably would have thought, having come into this tournament as a Monte Carlo champion, that round 3, that's not good enough.
It isn't, and he hasn't pushed on after that Monte Carlo result.
No, he hasn't.
I think it's almost been a bit like he's won a slam because he wanted it for so long to win a Masters. And then we see that happens after that first slam when there is a natural sort of letdown. And potentially we're sort of in that phase with him, with Monte Carlo being obviously one of his goals and dreams and next to slam. So maybe he's putting too much pressure on himself because, I mean, if you're able to bagel an opponent, irrespective of where that falls in a match, you should be winning that match, because that would say that either you figured it out or they have lost it mentally and they aren't able to answer the questions that you're asking. So that was really surprising because he is such a good front runner. But another match that I did see a bit of him this week, and he's got everything in the game, but then he still lost a set to Corentin Moutet out on Simone Mathieu again. And I was watching that and I was thinking, as I left that match, oh, this is done 3 sets. And somehow he lost a set. And if you look at the way they play, he could hit the ball probably at 75% speed and still get that done. But again, it's between the ears. So that is a big disappointment from Rublev. And it does make I still ask, like, is he in the mix when it comes to slams?
It comes to slams, yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. I think we still need that little bit more from him. Again, in the same camp as Yannick Sinner. Another player who did really well, Carlos Alcaraz, Novak Djokovic came through in straights against Davidovich Fokina. This was straight sets, but this was a real test for Djokovic. It took 3 hours, 36 minutes. I think it was his longest straight sets win of Djokovic's career at a Grand Slam level. So he was really pushed in those first 2 sets by Davidovich Fokina. But Djokovic coming through. I think nice test for him. We'll have to see if that has any impact on him in the future. But it was almost a little bit disappointing. I think Davidovich Fokina didn't. I think he deserved a set from the amount of effort he had put in.
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, it was a real slog, that match, and there wasn't much between them. And if you're matching someone like Djokovic...
It was at like 2 hours, 40 minutes, I think, after 2 sets of tennis. I was like, wow, this is pretty punishing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if it had gone to another set, imagine how long that would have gone. It would have been a real sort of superhuman effort for the winner if it had gone 5, for example. So for Djokovic, it's probably very important, given some questions around his fitness, that he is able to get through in 3,
Absolutely.
and that it wasn't longer than 4 hours. And recovery will be, as you get a bit older, recovery becomes more difficult. So I think it's a very, very sort of lucky escape from Djokovic in some respects, because a set here and there, and it could have made some of his progress a little bit less comfortable. But Davidovich Fokina, I mean, a good showing, but we're sort of having the same conversations again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, right? It's very hard to be at the top, stay at the top, and get it done consistently. And he's struggling to break through in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. But Novak Djokovic won't worry about that. He is into the 4th round. Interestingly, on the women's side, Chris, we had Aryna Sabalenka. Sabalenka won against Rakhimova 6-2, 6-2. And it was interesting because she did not do her press conference afterwards. She did not do an open news conference, and she cited it for her own mental health and well-being. She said she did not feel safe during her Wednesday news conference. So this was quite interesting because obviously the talk around Sabalenka at the moment is, she's from Belarus. People are wondering about her ties with political ties with the president there, and these questions keep coming up in her conferences, and she really does not want to answer them. There are a lot of comparisons, I think, with this being made with Naomi Osaka at the French Open, and not doing a press conference for similar reasons as well from a mental health point of view. Did you think this was fair game? What parallels and what do you take out from it in relation, I think, to that Naomi Osaka situation that happened previously?
Well, I think it's the French Open have definitely had a role in selecting who she spoke to as well. So I think that's a big difference is they've taken action, and it's not a player who's saying that they kind of aren't able to do it. It's to do with safety. There could easily be no questions on a certain topic, you could say, or one question. But the parallels, I think, is that Naomi was treated as though what she was doing was trying to bring the downfall of the tournament, that she wasn't completing her contractual obligations.
It was like, how dare Naomi Osaka not
Yeah, it was almost like she was entitled.
Who is
when
she?
I genuinely think that she was in a really, really bad patch from a mental health perspective, and she shouldn't have been playing tennis. Was actually the answer there. Was that she needed to take some time out because she wasn't enjoying it. She didn't have the confidence, and she didn't have the confidence to answer the questions in the press room because of how she felt about her game on clay. Whereas this feels like Sabalenka doesn't want to answer the questions, because you can't say that you don't feel safe when there are people in Ukraine who really don't feel safe. It's such a bad thing to say when you could just go to that press conference. You can say the same line every time. You could do almost like a Rybakina at Wimbledon. Oh, are you a Russian player? You're born in Moscow. Do you have ties to Russia? And she just said the same answer. I played for Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is the nation that supported my tennis career. This is what my flag is. And I think that's something we see players have to do. You default to your factory setting almost of like, this is my media training. This is what I say. And if someone has a problem with you and does make it personal, like Marta Kostyuk did make it personal, as well as obviously political, I think that's something you have to deal with. Whether someone likes you or whether someone doesn't respect you or not, or whether your nation is doing something that isn't great. It's a case where people have said to make your views clear. She has. She can keep saying the same thing. People will stop asking those questions. So I don't like this, and I don't really like the way that it's been handled by the French press, not inviting the BBC, inviting select reporters. It feels a bit like they're trying to minimize
damage limitation
as more and more Ukrainians progress through the draw.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the real reason here, is that Svitolina is still in, Zarenka's still in, and Svitolina's done so much for Ukraine and will have an awful lot to say about it. And I think they want to try and stop that becoming even more of a media story.
I think the wariness of the tournament organisers must be that Sabalenka is a favourite for the French Open title, and what is she going to have this happen as we go deeper into the competition? What happens, during if she gets to the final? What happens during the on-court ceremony? I think could be an issue that could be exacerbated.
Snowball.
Yeah. And I think that's why this is almost a dangerous step, because it sets a precedent. I'm like, okay, where's this going for the rest of the tournament? I mean, we'll have to see what happens after her match today. Interestingly, she's on the night session with Sloane Stephens.
Indeed.
Chris, I mean, first of all, we just need to rejoice and celebrate that we've got a ladies' match in the evening slot. It's the first women's night session match. As a big Sloane Stephens fans, what are your hopes going into this match? Because to me, Sloane Stephens has surpassed my hopes and expectations for her already going into round 4.
Well, she always turns up in Paris. We all know Sloane is one of the best players. It just doesn't always show that on the court every week, I guess. But I was courtside, and I talked about this last podcast, watching her play. It's majestic when she's able to move so well, hit so well. It really is something. And I think this could be a really good matchup for her. It's cold, the night match. That's probably the worst nightmare for Sabalenka. She wants a warm court. She wants that ball to fly through and to really do some damage. Sloane's defense is impeccable. Her and Coco and Iga, I'd say, were the best movers on the tour. So if there's ever a better slot for this match for Sloane, it is this match. And I think Sabalenka, I mean, it sounds like she's not in a great place, so hopefully that won't affect how she plays. But I think this could be an upset. I mean, I'm always upset alert, though, Joel. I think I always try and call an upset. So I'm like, I told you it was be an upset. But thank goodness there's a night session that's a women's match. And I mean, is it the right move to do it only at the end of the first week when there could have been multiple opportunities earlier in the week? But we take what we can get, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some interesting talk around, is this almost like a tokenistic gesture?
I really feel it is.
One match. I mean, I'll let the jury, I still be out until the end of the tournament, see if it's the only one that we're going to have. But yeah, I think there is an argument, if that is the case, then is it just better not to have them as opposed to, having some sort of token gesture? But we'll see. But I do think it is certainly going to be a blockbuster encounter. We did have also, Chris, Jessie Pegula going out. She's the third seed, lost to Elise Mertens. Hang on, Elise Mertens winning in the third round. That's not meant to happen. Yeah, Elise Mertens won 6-1, 6-3. But as you alluded to earlier, Jessie Pegula under the weather like Rybakina for different reasons. There's been some talk of food poisoning. She wrote it in her column for BBC Sport in the build-up. She was potentially saying, was it some bad piece of fish?
Escargot.
Escargot.
And she loves them. So that's pretty brave from a dietary perspective. But clearly she was hampered by it, whatever it was. And she saw probably the slightly more humorous side of things. But I mean, a big shame for her because, again, we thought this could be a good opportunity for her to go a little bit further in the tournament. But, Elise Mertens can play tennis. She really can. And she can make it difficult, especially if you're someone who isn't feeling great. It's a similar sort of prospect in terms of playing someone like a Sarah Cerebos Tormo, in the sense that she gets a lot of balls back. She makes you play. And if she's able to kind of hit winners like she was, I mean, she had a great differential of 19 winners, 7 unforced errors. It was super clean. So very surprising. But a few people are on the comeback trail this tournament, Joel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already spoken about Elina Svitolina, but Pavlyuchenkova, as you mentioned, she's obviously still got some great past memories of the French Open. She's through to play against Potapova. Svitolina as well has got Kasatkina. Yeah, so I feel like Pavlyuchenkova has gone on slightly more under the radar than Elina Svitolina, but both on incredible comeback journeys. And I mean, Pavlyuchenkova is a player, I think she was talking about, she didn't touch a racket for 5 months. The doctors didn't let her. So to see her back into the fourth round again is another impressive and inspiring story, in the same vein, I would say, than Elina Svitolina, regardless of nationality backgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. I think Pavlyuchenkova had no form coming into this at all. But if anyone knows her game, they'll know that she is technically one of the best and always was as a junior. And that's why she had so much junior success. So very pleased to see her back, because it's the sort of time in your career where things could go one of two ways. And we've seen it very challenging returns for people of similar ages, like Team and different players. So I think that's very impressive. I think for Svitolina, we were talking about the all-time earnings list, and she's so high up that. And I think her comeback has shown that she can step away from the game. She came back, she picked up a 250, just into the fourth round at the French Open. And I think who would say that she couldn't go further? I really do believe that she is flying, and she's reached 2 semi-finals at slams previously when she did not have form really that year on the tour. So she had great form coming into this, and I would honestly love it if she went a lot further in this tournament, because I think she's so inspiring for so many different reasons. And I think the fact that she's willing to come back, put all this effort in, turn up for a Gael Monfils match as well. I mean, she's doing overtime.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, one player, just before we get on to looking at the order of play for today, another Elina who has done very, very well this tournament, Elina Aveniasan, a lucky loser into the second week. Doesn't happen very often. She was eliminated by Kayla Day in qualifying round 3, but she came through against Clara Tauson in round 3 proper in Paris, 7-5 in the third. Yeah, I want to just touch on this, because this is an incredible story, because that is just the 5th time a women's player in the Open era has made the round of 16 as a lucky loser. And Chris, I know you're a big WTA fan, but these names I do not know much about. I don't know if you do. They happened so long ago to me. Hannah Strachanova in 1980, Dana Gilbert 1982, Nicole Jagerman 1988, and Maria Jose Gaidano in 1993. Listeners, let me know. Do you remember any of those? Do you remember any of those players going on crazy lucky loser runs? Because Aveniasan has added herself to the list. Yeah. Do you think it's going to stop here, or do you think it could go further?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think if Mukova, I think Mukova's probably a player that will do a very good job against her, because she's someone who has a lot of different weapons in her arsenal. But I still think
it's still amazing.
It's amazing. And I love the names. Not one of them am I aware of. Just so that if any of our listeners do know one, please let us know. Yes. And maybe we'll do a bit of research on them to find out, especially if she continues to progress. But it is becoming a little bit of a Russian and Ukrainian.
It is, isn't it? I was just noticing that.
Kasatkina, we've got Pavlyuchenkova, We've got Elena, we're talking about now. We've got Belarusians in that. I mean, this could get interesting. And interesting, I do not mean in terms of a drama and entertainment perspective, but in an actually politically quite an uncomfortable situation could be playing out on one of the bigger courts.
Absolutely. Well, we'll wait and see how that develops. As I say, the order of play for today, we've got Kachanov, Sonigo opening up on Suzanne Lenglen. That's followed by Mukova, Avenyusan, Svitolina, Kasatkina, and then Offner, Tsitsipas, and then Pavlyuchenkova, Mertens, Djokovic, Varias, Alcaraz, Musetti, and then Sloane Stephens, Sabalenka in that night session on Philippe Chatrier. Chris, before we leave, if there's one, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but if there is one match you are getting a ticket for today, which match is it?
I think I might surprise you.
Oh,
I'm gonna no. I'm gonna be at Mukova, Avenyusan.
What?
I'll be over there. No, I'm joking.
What?
I won't do that.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely not. But the ones that I'm really keen, I'd love to see would be Svitolina, Kasatkina would be my third choice. Steven Sabalenka second, and for me, the big ticket is Alcaraz Musetti. It has to be, because they are two young players playing so well. Whereas I think with the Sloane match, it might be one that I mentally can't handle the loss if it happens. We can give a little update, a tiny update, that at the moment some of those matches are live, and Mertens is a set and a break up. So we'll see if she can close that one out. But which ticket? Where are you, Joel?
Alcaraz Musetti has got to be.
You're joining me. You're joining me on Chatrier.
I'm joining you there. Steven Sabalenka though is going to be hopefully delivers on its night session.
We really hope.
Yeah, I can see it being like a 6-1, 2-6, 6-1 type scoreline. But we'll wait and see. But listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action still to come from Roland Garros. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And all of those handles are Tennis Weekly Pod. And if you would like to see any of the things that we've been posting from Roland Garros, then do check those out, because there's lots of things that we've been posting recently. You can also email the show, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back tomorrow at Tennis Weekly HQ for our round 4 French Open catch-up, brought to you by the Boodles. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.